Hello and welcome to today's Daily Downbeat. The song we'll be looking at today is Creedence Clearwater Revival's Walk on Water, which came out in 1968 on their self-titled debut album. Great song, great band. The song was written by the brothers John and Tom Fogerty, who ended up sort of having a meltdown between each other. Not going to go into that. The song's interesting, though. I couldn't really find any story behind it or anything that the Fogertys or Creedence or any of those people had to say about it. I'm going to go ahead and read the lyrics, and then we'll talk about it. I think it'd be pretty self-evident where we're going to go from there. Late last night, I went for a walk down by the river near my home. Couldn't believe with my own eyes, and I swear I'll never leave my home again. I saw a man walking on the water, coming right at me from the other side, calling out my name, do not be afraid. Feet began to run, pounding in my brain. I don't want to go. I don't want to go. No, 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 no. So it's pretty self-evident we're going to go to where Peter tries to walk on the water towards Christ, but we need to look at the setup from that first. So at this point in time, remember the disciples had just been on the mountainside with Christ. They fed 5,000 people with 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. And so they had just witnessed this miracle. The disciples were like, wow, well, we just saw what was going on. But this is where we'll start the scripture here. So we're going to look at Matthew 14, 22 through 33. Immediately, Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go on ahead of him to the other side, while he dismissed the crowd. This was on the mountainside where they had just performed the miracle of feeding the 5,000. After he had dismissed them, he went up on the mountainside by himself to pray. Later that night, he was there alone, and the boat was already a considerable distance from land, buffeted by the waves because the wind was against it. Shortly before dawn, Jesus went out to them walking on the lake. When the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. "It's a ghost," they said, and cried out in fear. But Jesus immediately said to them, "Take courage, it is I. Don't be afraid." "Lord, if it's you," Peter replied, "tell me to come to you on the water." "Come," he said. Then Peter got down out of the boat and walked on water and came toward Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid and began to sink and cried out, "Lord, save me." Immediately, Jesus reached out his hand and caught Peter's. "You of little faith," he said, "why did you doubt?" And when they climbed into the boat, the wind died down. Then those who were in the boat worshipped him, saying, "Truly you are the Son of God." Now let's go back to the song for a minute, because I do think there's a little bit of a narrative going on here. So it says, "I saw a man walking on the water, coming right at me from the other side, calling out my name, do not be afraid. Feet begin to run, pounding in my brain. I don't want to go. I don't want to go." So I wonder if there's ever been, and I can't speak for the Fogertys, I'm just kind of, brainstorming here. So I wonder if there's ever been a time where Jesus is like, "Do not be afraid. Come with me. I've got you. Take my hand." And we're like, ain't happening. I'm too fearful of what might happen, what might be. And then we run the other way. And so that's really kind of what I see there. But there's 2 things to take away from this that are really pretty powerful. Number 1, when we begin to sink or we begin to fall, when we cry out, his hand's there to meet ours, and he's going to pull us back out of whatever it is. Number 2, if Peter and us would just keep our eyes on Christ, there's so many other obstacles in life that we would never even notice. Peter, almost like quicksand, falls down into the water instead of walking on it because of all the elements that he's paying attention to, instead of keeping his eyes and his focus on Christ. We're the same way. When we tend to, walk out of that focus and we start to look at our peripheral vision instead of what's in front of us, we tend to, our mind goes another direction. So It's easy. It's a battle of the mind. And what our eyes are focusing on is usually what our mind is concentrating on as well. So we got to keep that in mind. So as you go about your day to day, give some thought to what Peter was going through when he was walking on that water. And think about those times in your life where if you had just stayed a little more focused, what would have happened? I know I have to reflect on that daily. And it's a constant battle, constant journey, but we can all get there and do it if we focus properly. So you can take that to the bank. That's today's Daily Downbeat. We'll catch you tomorrow. Thanks.